Hello everyone, how are you? Friends, today we will discuss about Home Rule movement, a very significant topic in the Indian freedom struggle. In today's lecture, we will discuss about the overall objectives of Home Rule movement, what was the reaction of the Britishers against this movement, and what was the significance of this Home Rule movement in our freedom struggle, and what were the causes of its decline. So I have thoroughly covered this topic from the UPSC mains perspective. So I think we should start the lecture without wasting any time. Friends, this Home Rule movement was launched between 1916 to 1918 and was a very significant milestone in India's struggle for freedom. Before we dive into its details, I think we should address a fundamental question that might arise in your mind, that what is Home Rule? Home Rule basically refers to self-government within the British Empire. This was similar to the status enjoyed by erstwhile white colonies like Canada, Australia, or South Africa. In Home Rule, overall autonomy for self-government is given, but the sovereignty remains with the British monarch. In Indian context, we had borrowed this term from Irish Home Rule movement, where Ireland sought autonomy without severing ties with Britain. In India, this phrase home rule was used for the first time by Miss Annie Besant, and this home rule movement was initiated separately by Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Annie Besant. Now we'll discuss about their leagues. Friends, Bal Gangadhar Tilak launched his home rule league in April 1916 with a focus on areas like Maharashtra, Karnataka, central provinces, and Berar. In Maharashtra, he excluded the city of Bombay, and this city was covered by the League of Annie Besant. Bal Gangadhar Tilak focused on these areas because he had a strong grassroots presence in these areas, and he believed, he had firm faith that his message would effectively resonate among the rural population. His famous slogan, "Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it," inspired masses during this movement. Now, Besant's Home Rule League was launched in September 1916, covering the rest of India, including the city of Bombay. She used her newspapers, New India and Commonweal, to spread the message of Home Rule. Besant was a British reformer and was a very active member of Theosophical Society of India. She believed in India's right to self-rule, and her involvement in the Indian freedom struggle gave our freedom movement a very kind of global audience. So her presence in our freedom struggle was very significant. So now the question might arise: why two separate home rule leagues were launched? Why did not Tilak and Besant launch the one united home rule movement? Friends, there were two basic reasons. One was Tilak and Besant had different constituency, different areas of operations and strategies. This was the first reason. And the another reason was given by Annie Besant when she was asked about the reason of launching two separate leagues. She said that some of my followers do not like Tilak and some of Tilak's followers don't like me. So this was another reason why both these political stalwarts launched two separate movements, two separate home rule leagues. Okay, so let's start. I think we should now discuss objectives of the home rule movement. The very first objective was to attain self-government within the British Empire. Leaders did not demanded complete independence at that point because they believed India lacked the industrial base, administrative experience, and global recognition to demand independence at that point. So their main demand was dominion status, and that was seen as a step towards eventual freedom, aligning with constitutional principles. Okay. Next was to educate the masses. Leaders like Besant and Tilak, they used newspapers and pamphlets to explain political rights. Annie Besant, I had just mentioned, she used her newspapers, New Indian Commonweal, to educate the masses and to organize public opinion. Whereas Tilak ji used pamphlets, six Marathi and two English pamphlets, to explain the plight of the Indian people. Next objective was to revive political activity in India. We had just seen that after the decline of the Swadeshi movement and internal divisions in the Congress after the Surat split of 1907, we were witnessing a kind of political dormancy in India. So, this home rule movement re energized the masses, raised their morale that had reached its lowest ebb after the Surat split, and prepared them for future struggles. So, this was also a very important objective. Next was to demand larger political representation for Indians from the British government. Okay. This demand focused on greater Indian participation in administration and legislative council, and this was considered a very special step, very crucial step towards self rule. Uh, I think now we'll discuss reaction of the British rule. We should discuss about reaction, how the Britishers reacted towards this home rule movement. Friends, from the very outset, Britishers were against home rule. Though this movement was completely constitutional and peaceful, they, from the very outset, British Indian government opposed this movement and threatened and undertook repressive measures. Why? Because this movement threatened the colonial status quo. The British feared that demands for self rule could inspire uprising, especially during the turbulent times of wartime period. Unstable wartime period was going on. So they undertook repressive measures. Tilak was put to trial and he was asked to pay a security deposit of rupees 60,000, and he was also bound over to be for good behavior for coming 1 year. Anyways, he was charged with sedition, but was acquitted thanks to his lawyer Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Friends, uh, I would like to mention that this Tilak ji lost his case initially in the magistrate's court, but he succeeded in High Court. So this was a very significant victory for movement. Why it was very significant victory? Because this gave a kind of legitimacy to the demand of home rule. Why? When Tilak ji won this case in High Court, this means now High Court has given legitimacy to this demand for home rule, and it can no longer be considered seditious. Okay. Now Annie Besant was also arrested in June 1917. She was placed under house arrest, sparking nationwide protest. Various prominent figures like Subramaniam Iyer resigned their titles like knighthood, and moderate leaders like Madan Mohan Malviya, Banerjee, Surendranath Banerjee, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, they joined the Home Rule Leagues to express their support to the Home Rule movement. So and next reaction was under public pressure, British government, particularly Edwin Montague, on August 20, 1917, he made a declaration that it was the government's intent to increase the association of Indians in every branch of administration and to progressively realize responsible government in India. Friends, this promise for reforms was not entirely a genuine promise, but it legitimized the demand for self-rule. Again, earlier High Court gave legitimacy to this demand. Now British government also gave legitimacy that they also declared that it was also their objective to to make India progressively realize responsible government. So now this demand for Swaraj and self-rule again got legitimacy from the government side as well. I think this point is also clear. Now we'll discuss about the significance of this movement. Friends, the first significance of this movement was that it led to political awakening. It revived nationalism and it ended the political pessimism that had encompassed our freedom struggle post 1907 after the Surat split and inspired confidence among the Indians in waging a struggle against the Britishers. So, overall, it revived nationalism. That was the first significance of this movement. Another significance was that it reunited the Congress. Extremists and moderates reconciled their differences during the Lucknow session of 1916 that was held under the presidency of Ambikacharan Majumdar. And now extremists and moderates created a unified front against the Britishers. Next, next significance of this movement was the self-rule. Self was the kind of legitimacy given to the demand for self-rule. This was a very major policy shift by the Britishers because before that, before this August Declaration made by Lord Montague, this demand for self-rule or home rule was considered seditious. But now Montague's declaration, when it emphasized that now it is also government's intent to grant self-government, now these such demands of Swaraj and home rule or self-rule got legitimacy and were no longer considered seditious. So this movement was a very important, very significant chapter of our freedom struggle. This movement laid the foundation for future struggles, but internal divisions and World War One prevented it from achieving its immediate goals. And though it could not achieve its immediate goal of home rule, but yes, this laid the foundation for future struggles. And we all know in the Gandhian phase, in all the movements, whether it be NCM or CDM or Quit India movement, the basic demand of independence and home rule became an integral part of our freedom struggle from now onwards. I hope this point is also clear. Now I'll discuss about what were the causes of its decline. Friends, the first reason that after Besant's release from house arrest, moderate leaders were appeased by the promise of reforms and were reluctant to adopt civil disobedience or other such measures against the government because the so we all know that Lord Montague had made a declaration and promising reforms to the moderates. So moderate leaders were now appeased by those promises of reforms, and they were reluctant to show their support to the movement. So that was the one reason why this movement declined. Another was there were some internal inconsistencies. Why? Because Annie Besant was wavering in her stance. She was showing vacillation in her stance on the 1919 reforms and civil disobedience. Initially, she was dismissing those reforms. No, they were not sufficient enough. But later, under moderate pressure, she accepted them. So there were internal inconsistencies. Friends, next point is lack of leadership. The movement became leaderless. Why? Because Bal Gangadhar Tilak went to England to fight a legal case against Valentine Chirol. This Valentine Chirol was a British journalist who had, in his book Indian Unrest, described Tilakji as a father of Indian unrest. So Tilakji filed a suit against him in London, and this was a very important case. Why? Because Tilakji had spent a lot of money and he almost became bankrupt just because of this case. And after that, many of his followers started collecting some funds for Tilakji. So, well, that is not important for us from this topic's perspective. And Besant's indecision, just we just discussed above, also left the movement leaderless. So, uh, this was also one of the main reasons why this movement dwindled. Okay. So, friends, this was a very important movement. Home rule movement was a very turning point in our freedom struggle. It bridged the gap between elitist politics and mass mobilization, and it revived the Congress and set the stage for future leaders like Gandhiji. So, this was a very important topic we have just covered. So, I would suggest you guys to take screenshots and make proper notes for this topic. Thank you so much for watching this session.